Hey, family, it's your sister Jocelyn here, and welcome to another episode of Faith on the Journey. If this is your first time tuning in, we welcome you. We are so glad that you are here and want you to know that we are committed to helping you strengthen your faith, heal your heart, and discover a sense of community. And we do so through a variety of ways by connecting you with a qualified team of Christian counselors who specialize in trauma, grief, and loss, and just walking with you during those painful events in your life. We also offer trauma healing groups throughout the year that you can plug into, connect with other believers, and have them walk with you as you move forward on your healing journey. You can learn about these resources and so much more by visiting our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. Now, for today's episode, we are bringing to the virtual stage an amazing woman who is doing things across the world. Dr. Kit Evans Ford is a national trainer, spiritual director, and professor, and she is passionate about nonviolence, God, and serving others. She's been a trainer and activist for over 14 years. She has several degrees, including a MA in social justice and community development and a doctor of ministry in spiritual direction. Dr. Kitt is the adjunct professor at the Department of Theology at Ambrose University. She's also the author of two books, and she is certified spiritual director and founder of Argrow's House of Healing and Hope in Davenport, Iowa. Dr. Kitt serves as the minister at Grace City Church and resides in Davenport, Iowa, with her husband, Pastor Dwight Ford, and children. And so we are very excited to have her on our show today. Thank you so much, Dr. Kitt, for joining us.
Hey. Hi everyone. So good to be here. Thanks for having me, Jocelyn.
Absolutely. And I would love to just learn a little bit more about your story in terms of what are some of the things that transpired in your life early on to put you on the path of doing this important work.
Okay. All right. So I think the thing that's interesting about this type of work connected to trauma and healing is that oftentimes either ourselves, we've experienced something personally connected to our own personal experience of trauma and healing, or someone very close, near, and dear to us has experienced it. And so, my journey kind of starts off. The reality of domestic violence was prevalent in my home growing up, and so this became a issue very dear to my heart: domestic violence. At a young age, joined an organization in high school called Students Against Violence Everywhere. It's called SAVE now. We've partnered with Sandy Hook Promise, and so the organizations do good work together. The parents of children who were massacred at Sandy Hook started an organization called Sandy Hook Promise. At 14, moved forward with that organization. At about 16, I became their spokesperson in North Carolina. And just really, it really helped well, God saved me, Jesus. That's something that was gifted to me when I was very young through the women in my family, really strong women of faith. Though there was the reality of violence and abuse, they all had a really strong faith and really had a heart for serving the community and the church in different capacities. But SAVE became really instrumental for me. I was blessed to go to college in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and had a passion still for justice, for violence prevention, for at the time we called it peer mediation, all those type things. And also the arts. So I learned about how the arts could be used to teach about social injustice and things of that nature. Did Teach for America, and then I did the Peace Corps, working with women, working with children in education, HIV and AIDS, and also women, getting women more involved in politics. But unfortunately, during my time as a Peace Corps volunteer, I became a survivor of an extremely violent sexual assault. And so that really set the path. Well, I think the path had already been set for me, but it really I made a big pivot as it relates to what I felt like I was put on the planet to do. Surviving that assault, really, and also going through PTSD and a court case where in a trial that took a couple years, the man received 46 years in prison. He was a serial rapist. Me and another woman testified. And so going through that trauma, but having the best possible resources, it really helped me understand what survivors specifically of sexual violence go through as a survivor myself, but also the importance of having great quality counseling. That's why I appreciate what you all do on the network here and within this organization, and also in this podcast. Talking about healing, but also practical resources. I had the best possible therapy, the best possible victim advocates, all of these different things that I had, even financial resources to help me push forward in my healing journey. Healing is a journey. It's take it one step at a time. Part of that was also accepting my call to ministry. And so I went to seminary and studied theology, but also studied how the Bible could be used to assist people healing from violence and abuse, specifically sexual violence. And eventually, 10 plus years later after seminary, much of my work was still focused on trauma and healing. And I was introduced to social enterprise through the work of Becca Stevens, Reverend Becca Stevens in Nashville, Tennessee, organization called Thistle Farm. She was the first 25 years ago to start a bath and body product company. They had a healing house have a healing house called the Magdalene House. And they've served hundreds of women, and, it's a multi-million-dollar business now. And so my dear mentor now, Becca Stevens, really planted that seed when I was a seminary student that it was possible to have a healing house, a home, a place where you provide free services for women who've survived violence and trauma, but also have a business that helps to feed back into that ministry, also giving women, purpose and affirmation and also money in their pockets as they journey ahead. And so, yeah, we started Argos House in 2017, Do Good X, which Jocelyn was also a part of last year. I was in the first cohort in 2017 and helped me through the Forum for Theological Exploration, helped me to launch Argos House. And we're 5 years in now, have gained a lot of support, have grown our business, and we're able to serve many women and children in our community here in Illinois and Iowa.
That's exciting, and I
Yeah.
love hearing your story, especially because many people who would be tuning in to our podcast might be seeking God's wisdom about the steps that they might be able to take to start their own healing ministry and do this important work, whether it be around domestic violence or another issue that's important to them. And so I'm curious, as you look back over your life, and see kind of all the things that you've done over the years in respect to a healing ministry.
Mhm.
Is this something where you feel like you planned this out, or it's just like you were just kind of walking one step at a time and God was ordering your steps? Like, how did you
Mhm.
walk into this healing ministry?
Yeah,
If my question makes sense.
yeah, absolutely. I don't think you just walk into it. I think that sometimes we do, but I do know. I mean, there's scripture that talks about writing it down, making it plain. I do think that it's important to plan. It's important to write the vision, be it on a piece of notebook paper or in a journal or on a vision board. I think those things are definitely important because when you're starting something, you want to make sure that you do your best to dot I's and cross T's the best that you can with what you have and the community that you are in. Argos House was actually a senior paper of mine when I was a seminary student back in 2012. I had no idea I was kind of writing the vision for something that would be birthed many years later. Um, But yeah, I wrote down this Women's Center for Healing and Hope, and it was a 5-year plan to develop relationships in a community. And I would find a home, purchase a home, somehow would purchase the home. And we would provide free services from volunteers who were experts in, chiropractic care, counseling, yoga, all of these different things. And so I was kind of unconsciously doing it in the community that I had moved to when Argos House started. And so I do think that it's important to write the vision and make it plain. Sometimes that vision may pivot, sometimes it may shift. Things may shift as you move forward, as you develop relationships, as you get more resources. But I do think it's important to write the vision and make it plain, even if it's just a vision board where you're putting images of things that you feel like God has put into your heart, connected to the ministry that you're working to develop, focused on healing. And so, yeah, I think that's important. But then I also think that I always talk about there's this metaphor of a spotlight that someone told me about years ago. And if you're on a stage in a spotlight, that light is coming down, but you can only see so far sometimes. And so that spotlight is there, and you take one step forward. And when you take that step forward, that spotlight moves a little bit, and you can see a little further ahead. I think we can write that vision and make it plain, but on the journey as well, I do think that, if we just take that one step forward, okay, share with someone your vision in the community that you trust, that you feel you would want to be on your board of directors, right? That's one step forward, right? Like, ask friends and family for donations to help you start this ministry. That's another step forward, right? Like, start doing outreach in the community, even if it's going to a local community center, or asking if you can teach, Bible study or something in the local shelter if you don't have your own, right? So, yeah, so it's just one step at a time, one day at a time. We have the vision, but I do know that it's that one spotlight, that one step at a time, and as you take those steps, you'll get more momentum as you go, because you won't be doing it alone. It literally takes a village to do this work, and you do not have to do this work alone. Yesterday, I was ordained, thanks be to God, as an elder.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. And one thing that was really a gift that God gave me was really, I mean, I felt like a load of bricks was kind of lifted off of my shoulder. I feel like since I've started Argos House, I've felt like I've had to carry so much. And what I realized yesterday, what the gift that God gave me was that I don't have to carry this alone. And the load that I do carry, God is there with me, but then sometimes he carries the load for me, but he oftentimes will send other people that will assist you with that load. And so we have to realize, as we start to develop ministries, that my husband always says that God loves us through people. And I do feel like he gifts us with people on the journey that will help us lift this weight.
Amen. I always talk about community too, whether it's doing
Yeah.
the work for others or your healing process. So I couldn't agree with you more when it comes to that.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious for you, as you were discerning how to set up Argrow's house.
Mhm, mhm.
Sometimes we struggle with, like, is this going to be a ministry? Should this be a for profit?
Mhm.
How would this look? And so, what helped you to determine how you would set up Argro's house?
Yes.
And I'll ask some follow up questions after that.
Yeah, yeah. This is our soap. I was sharing our product because when you talk about business, right, you have, or social enterprise, you have a entity that makes money. So in a sense, it's for profit. You're making money because you have a product or a service. But then you also have a nonprofit component. And for us, and social enterprises, we are often serving a marginalized community. For us at Argos House, we are serving women and children who are survivors of domestic violence, sex trafficking, childhood molestation, rape, incest, all of these different things. And so, when it comes to setting that up, it is really imperative to have a 501c3, which is a nonprofit status. We have three different streams of income, and from the beginning, one thing that we did make sure that we had set up was making sure we had a lawyer to help us with our paperwork, be it going to your local a local law office, letting them know what you're doing, and the local law office here actually discounted. They cut our bill in half because they saw what we were doing. Or if you know of a lawyer in your community, that was really helpful for us to make sure we had that proper paperwork in so that we could have a 501c3 status. Also, we work with an accountant early on. We realized that the way that we made our resources for our social enterprise would be from private donations, which have helped us to pay off two buildings in 4 years, thanks be to God. Um, we had grants, which, as we've developed more trust in the community, granting organizations, family trust and things have started to trust us more, so that when we apply for grants, we're gifted those grants now, and also endowments and other things that families have entrusted with the work that we do. And oftentimes that money goes to support programming for Argos House, the holistic programming that we use to support our ladies' mind, body, and spirit, be it counseling, be it support groups, animal therapy, things of that nature. And then we have our Bath and Body Social Enterprise, which is the money that we get from selling our beautiful soaps and lotions and shower bombs and all these different things that we have created. And so that is a for-profit business, but all of that money goes back into the nonprofit. But we make sure that we separate those things for tax purposes. So we make sure that we pay our sales tax every single month for our soap. For our Bath and Body business, we make sure that our employees for Argos House, the Bath and Body company, are paid in that's a separate account, literally a separate bank account. But again, it goes back into the 501c3 and what we do as a nonprofit. If you don't have a nonprofit status, oftentimes, the donors, the granting organizations, the private donors, the endowments, the trust, the families that have gifted us with resources, they probably wouldn't donate because they wouldn't get their tax write-off for their taxes. And so people who are able to give $20,000, $40,000, they do that often because they care, but they also do that because it helps them to have certain tax breaks during tax season. And so that 501c3 status is very important.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
That's very helpful information for someone who is going down a similar path right now.
Mhm.
And in terms of the work on I'll say the ministry side of helping the women who've come to your location for help and services, what are some of the things that you have done or methods that you have used to help those who you're serving to heal emotionally? What has been really helpful?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think that every woman's healing journey is different, right? Like everybody, what vibes with one woman may not be another woman's, heart connection as it relates to her healing. Early on, I wrote a couple, papers for my studies. And I use Judith Herman as a professor at Harvard. She has a book called Trauma and Recovery. And it talks about what are the most effective healing strategies for survivors of trauma. And she talked about how it's important to have establishment of safety, which includes safe housing, or safe housing, as safe as we can get housing for the ladies, be it at Argos House or a partner agency. It talked about remembrance and mourning, having a safe space for for the woman who survived trauma to be able to lament, to be able to remember what happened to her, to mourn what she has lost, and have safe places to do that, be it counseling, support groups, animal therapy, whatever type of therapy that we have art therapy, all these different types of therapy that allow safe places for women to really be able to remember and mourn. And then that last component that Herman talked about was reconnection with ordinary life. I think oftentimes when trauma happens, it's so easy to forget who you are. Oftentimes, I mean, when we experience trauma, we'll never be the same, but there's certain things about us that make us, Kit, that make us Jocelyn, that, just makes us feel good. It helps us feel alive and gives us peace. So what are those things? Is it cooking? Is it, having a full-time job or a part-time job doing something you're extremely passionate about? Is it playing uncontrollably with your children and laughing and having a safe place to do that? Is it journaling? Is it song? Is it dance? Is it, exercise? And so we've worked to create, these safe spaces for women to have access to those things so that they can tap into reconnecting with their life and who they are.
That's beautiful. And I love how you mentioned it's many ways you can go about this. This is not
Mhm,
just one path towards healing, and
mhm.
being able to offer that in community, I'm sure is very helpful. Now, I'm I want us to have a real moment, especially for those who are going in the route of starting a healing ministry or even a nonprofit, how even though we're passionate about it, we believe in the work, it gets hard. Nothing about this is easy. And so for you, what kept you going when it got hard?
Yeah. Well, what keeps me going, not what kept, because it's still hard. I mean, the work is hard, what keeps me going? I think I just shared with you this kind of epiphany, spiritual kind of epiphany I had yesterday about carrying the load, and understanding that I don't have to do it alone. I think as your organization grows, but even if you don't have any money, right? There are people in your community who are passionate about similar things, and they want to help. You just have to tell them what to do and treat them really kind and give them, if you have, if it's a thank you letter or, a cup of coffee every now and then, just thinking and appreciating them in that way. But if I can't say anything else about delegation and asking for help and serving in community, that is very important. I think also, as I get older, the importance of self-care. There's always going to be more work to do. Right now, I'm thinking about 4 women I need to call. We have several vendor events coming up. So I'm like, oh, I need to put this. I need to do this. But, it's okay. We take it one step at a time, one day at a time. And it's important to take care of yourself. So be it having your own spiritual director or counselor to talk to, if it's, taking a walk, daily walk, or having your favorite meal, in the evenings with your family. Those things are small things that are big things that'll help you stay sustained and will sustain you as you journey in this really important but really intense, difficult work at times.
Yeah, I don't think we can emphasize enough how important it is to still care for yourself while you're caring for others. That sometimes takes a back seat and it's harmful because it's not sustainable in the long run if you give, and don't take time for yourself to be filled back up. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Jocelyn. And I had a feeling you all I have a feeling on this amazing podcast that you all talk about self-care often.
Yeah, got to.
I
Got
love
to. Yeah. And
it.
and sometimes I'll be the first to admit that I don't do enough of it because again, especially if you're called to work in this field, the passion just drives you and it don't let you be a creative because then you have ideas galore. And it's like taking time to slow down is tough. But no, I appreciate that healthy reminder for even myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
so at some point you wrote a book.
Mhm,
And you also are an adjunct professor. There's a number of other things that you're doing to promote this work around nonviolence and just being an advocate against domestic violence. Talk a little bit more about that and how that everything that you're doing is kind of is related to your personal mission. I almost want to
mhm,
describe.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that I've been so blessed at a young age to have a lot of really good experiences serving around the world. I wrote a couple books. One from the denomination I grew up in, focused on Bishop Richard Allen, the AME Church, and nonviolence. For the last 12 years, I had worked as a gospel nonviolence trainer around the world for Pace Bene Nonviolent Service, teaching about conflict resolution and other things using the teachings of Jesus and Gandhi and others. So that really, after seminary, really kind of set the foundation for my kind of vocational journey as a chaplain and a nonviolence trainer. In this part of my life, at the university, I was teaching comparative religions. So teaching 7 different religions, prayer and spirituality, and women and social justice. But recently I've learned that in order to grow something, if you have the privilege, you do have to focus. And so I still do consulting with a couple organizations around social enterprise and community development in other countries. But, I focus my work now with Argos House as a spiritual director. And I also have another social enterprise focused on chewable jewelry for kids with autism and advocating for autism for families, as both of my children have autism. So I think as the path moves forward, it's important for us to be mindful of how we use our energy. We can't do everything, right? But we can be focused on the things that not only bring us joy, but the things that we're passionate about. And the thing about when you start an organization, it takes time for the money to come. It took a couple years before I even took a salary, a very modest stipend salary at Argro's House. And so it does take time. Many of us, when we start an organization, we're still working our full-time job, and then we're also doing our ministry full-time too, right? So we're working 2 full-time jobs, just one is paid, one is not paid. But if you continue to move forward, be very strategic about, applying for funding, developing relationships, getting a good board of directors. If you're starting a business, being very intentional about your business plan and making sure that you're following and have mentors in that business. It will grow and you will eventually be paid. Thanks be to God. So yeah, I would encourage you, if you're working a full-time job now, focus on your passions or not, you can still create, that ministry and, just take it one step at a time and be encouraged.
That's wonderful. I appreciate that. And I think that's a great way to end our time together. And I encourage everyone who's tuning in today to just visit Argos House website, support them. And if you are able to, also follow Dr. Kit. She's doing some amazing things. You can visit her website, get connected, and support the wonderful work that she's doing. She's trailblazing in so many areas around this important subject. And so I'm grateful for you, Dr. Kit, and your work and how you've blessed us today with your time. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. It's an absolute delight. Thank you for having us. And yeah, check out argoshouse.org for any kind of gifting needs. Everything's handmade with love. We also work with artisans around the country and the world. We have a subscription service. So yeah, check us out. And yeah, again, be encouraged. I'm so proud of each of you. I'm proud of you, Jocelyn, Rev. And yeah, I thank God for your ministry and what you're doing here. And I look forward to being more active as well as a follower of your ministry as well. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning into today's episode. Especially, we make this just for you if you're looking to step out into your own healing ministry and know that it is a journey, it's a process, but it's worth it. And if God's calling you to move forward into ministry, we hope that this is something that's pushing you to take that next step because someone needs you to do the work. And again, if this is your first time tuning in, thank you for checking us out today. And I hope it's not the last. You can find out about more resources such as this by visiting us at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that's faithonthejourney.org. And if you enjoyed today's episode, I encourage you to leave a 5-star review and share this with a friend. So that's it for this week, you all. Thank you again for tuning in. And until next time, you keep your faith on the journey. I'll see you soon.